Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
Hi, today's guest is an entrepreneur, an experience and service designer, and innovator, a co-founder of the Xyz Playground. Please welcome to the show, Lina Safstrom. Tell me a bit about yourself. So how do you connect the dots of innovation? Who are you? Let the listeners know who you are. What's your story?
Yeah, I don't know where to start the story, but I can start with that I studied at a school here in Sweden called Hyper Island, which is a digital school. Some call it the digital Hogwarts, because you learn very timeless skills there about innovation and problem solving, and you go out there being a proactive problem solver, learning about feedback, service design, getting close to real customer and people needs and innovating from there, experimenting and exploring. So I really had a good time studying there.
Did you need to go there through a train station as well, or like running through the world stuff?
Exactly. And straight into a prison, because it's a prison on an island, so it's a very unique location also.
It's close. Is it close to Stockholm somewhere, or?
It started in Karlskrona, which is in south of Sweden, and then it has grown into Stockholm, London, Singapore, and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed my time there. And after that, I went to Dubai working in advertising, which was a really interesting market.
I can imagine.
And values, and a different way of using technology also. So I had an interesting time there, but I also felt a little bit like I was only scratching the surface, both in terms of having a lot of different clients, but also being quite late in the process of actually producing things. So I wanted to go back to Sweden and work in-house for an organization that I felt was doing meaningful things. So I was working in the public sector, actually at the Swedish prison and probation service. At their communications department.
So going from Hyper Island, which was Hogwarts, to Dubai and then going into a prison. Interesting. So, tell us more about that.
But I thought it was interesting to go more into depth of an organization and understand the picture or the associations with an organization like that. Is quite an anonymous organization. If you haven't been interacting with it before, there's a lot of questions. So I thought that was really interesting. And also they were working a lot with becoming a more modern organization. And that work was really interesting also. And from there, I moved to a Swedish furniture company that also has a good vision of creating a better everyday life for the many people. So I moved to the Google of Scandinavia in the middle of the Swedish forest, working with customer experience and business development and service design. So we were a team of 5 just exploring new technology and also understanding the needs and dreams and desires of our customers. And in the 50s, when this furniture company started, the solution to a better everyday life was furniture. And of course, this has changed throughout the years. So we did a really interesting exploration loop of what it means in the 2000s.
Right.
So that's where I have been also.
So, and now you're kind of on the way towards entrepreneurship. I called you already entrepreneur, which I think you are, even that you call yourself more freelancer. We have had this discussion before. So how did it come that you end up like doing your own thing?
It was a desire to spread my wings a little bit and see what happens when you don't have as many established constraints, you could say, or frameworks.
Nice way to say it.
Yeah, very diplomatic.
Diplomatic.
Yeah, exactly. But I think also there's a massive learning from variation, working with different organizations and companies, because I think we commonly see recurring patterns of the same needs in a lot of different organizations. And one of them being going from a linear business model to a circular business model. And that not necessarily doesn't mean only from an environmental aspect, but sustainability is also how you interact with your coworkers and clients and create feedback loops, you could say. Yeah, which is really interesting. So, yeah, a lot of thinking. And I love that sort of philosophical early stage of creating concepts and speaking with people and seeing tendencies and developments in the world and in culture. So I wanted to dig deeper into that, even though there's not necessarily those roles of corporate philosophers and things like that. Not yet. Yeah. in traditional formats.
How did your perspective shift, like going from a well-established large corporation into your own world, like being responsible for your own from a business perspective? How did your perspective shift?
Well, I think when I started at the Digital Hogwarts, I thought that maybe the reality looked like that. I didn't have any previous references of an innovation or a business context before. So I felt the school was actually really before its time. And I did not really see that coming back out. So in a way, I'm going back to where I started, where I studied, and exploring that now. To see what value we can create, and really curious about young leaders today and their values and what they're looking for in businesses and what creates value for them.
Yeah. How do you see, as a young entrepreneur, how do you see the world right now? What's working, what's not working?
Yeah, I think we're still stuck in the industrial ways of working. I think we can see that from this year also, the concept of work. We're in an era of knowledge and collaboration and digitalization, but we're still operating from an industrial point of view. So I'm looking forward to see a shift from commodity production and product to information thinking and concept, which is more circular. You have feedback loops constantly. And the currency of today and will increase every day is like having information, having ideas, having community, and having time. And also the ability to adapt to an ever-changing landscape.
Yeah. From an entrepreneurial perspective, like what are the things you struggle most with, like in the phase where you're right now, is like fulfilling your dream, doing something big? What is the toughest thing when you come from the safe haven of corporate, jumping into the cold water?
I think it's creating trust and credibility in potential clients, to move away from this, pointing and planning and knowing the direction, to going into more of an exploration phase and experimentation phase, not being scared of losing face. Not scared of being wrong, not being scared of not knowing, and also not necessarily knowing the outcome, because we don't know that in an exploration. But actually building trust and credibility to involve people, and moving away also from being a client and executor to more like participants and co-creators.
Yeah, it's a great way of seeing it. And I think that will be the struggle, especially with the big organizations, where being that flexible and being willing to go into that direction, and not just being willing to, it's like doing it. That's the hardest thing, because a lot of companies already talking about these topics, most probably a couple of years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have a great example of an organization that is quite unexpected. It's actually the Swedish Tax Council. They have done a massive transformation journey, and I've actually ordered their book, which is what I'm reading right now, and I get so positively provoked that it's them who's being so progressive in their thinking, and like really moving. I sometimes I meet them in like these really future festivals and all these things, and they work with innovation. And also being able to hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. So how can you be both the controlling authority and a helpful hand, and also shifting your mind from assuming the worst in people to assuming the best in people, because most Swedish citizens want to do right. They have a desire to get their taxes right. 90% wants to get their desires right. So like how can a public sector like that can do such tremendous transformation? I think that's really inspiring.
That's cool. Maybe you can connect them with the Germans as well going forward. So from still staying a little bit in the entrepreneurship world, like what would you recommend others? I know you're still early in your journey. It's like jumping out of the corporate world, but what would you recommend others who are still thinking like, should I do it? Should I not do it? But what is kind of the most sexy things you learned, the most interesting topics doing it?
Yeah, I think you can never go wrong with following a purpose. And I think young leaders of today are so much more purpose-driven rather than profit or making a company profitable. Definitely. But then at the same time, holding two thoughts at the same time, how can you both be purposeful and profitable at the same time and create value? Like we need to look into the narrative of what is value and what is value exchange. But you can never go wrong with pushing for purpose, what your purpose is and why you exist and why your business exists and what value it creates.
Ben, you're co-founder of a new business which is called the Xyz Playground. What is that?
Yeah, the Xyz Playground is a meeting place because there's 3 different generations in the workplace right now, which is generation X, Y, and Z. And I think we can learn a lot from all 3 generations, but it's a gateway, it's a bridge between the different generations to talk. I know some of the trends right now is a reverse mentorship, but I think it goes both ways. But it's a way for young people to maybe show by example what is possible with a digital mindset. It's so easy to discard young people with phones being just on their phones, but I mean, there's so much happening there. It's so much more than just an annoying device in your pocket. Someone might be booking an appointment with a medical doctor. Someone might do their banking. Someone might organize a demonstration. Someone might listen to a conference on sustainability. So really realizing the possibilities of what digital can enable, because you have access to limitless of information. You can reach anyone in the world right now. We can organize ourselves in a way we haven't done before. And you're able to prototype and produce things at a very low cost and very low risk. And you can get instant feedback from the public. So anyone can produce a movie or a book or anything. I can only just imagine the fear and paralyzation of creating something and producing it, like a book, for example, and you know there's some typos. You can't iterate, and it's quite linear. But here you can just shift and change the whole time and iterate. So there's so much more possibility with digital that we have only just scratched the surface on. And that I want to enable with the Xyz Playground.
Yeah. So that's then explain a little bit more what the playground is. So you said like XYZ are the different generations kind of interacting with each other. What about the playground thing?
Yeah, the playground is a safe space, and there's enormous potential in the idea of play, because you can actually move away from the rules of regular life and have different rules in this context. And you can wear many different hats, so you can explore together with others and simulate real life scenarios through play, where you can explore new sides of yourself and new sides of your business.
Interesting. So how does it, it's like, who are the people engaging with each other? I get it from the different generations, but is it like corporations working with you guys? How does that work?
Yeah, so again, going from client to executor, everyone's in there are participants and co-creators, but we are offering young leaders of tomorrow, and we're a team from many different sides of the world. And funnily enough, I have never met these people in physical life, which is really interesting, but I trust them fully. And we are there to facilitate a transformation or change your mindset. Really depends on what the client wants to explore in the safe space.
Yeah, interesting. So you said you're basically running a business with people you have never met in person. How does that work?
No, I think it's really amazing, and that's what digital can enable. You can meet people you formerly wouldn't meet, but here are different people, and I think there's a massive value in the diversity of our group as well. We have people from South Africa, Netherlands, the UK, Sweden, Germany, Copenhagen, Denmark. So I think there's so much to learn from all of us.
Well, I'm really looking forward in following that activities and seeing what's going on. Looping a little bit towards innovation. So how do you connect the dots? I know you're a very visual person. I still remember when we met first time was in a meeting in a corporate setting, and it's like you basically took notes, but it wasn't in words. It was a couple of words, but it was drawing the whole time, which was awesome. Would love to be able to do that as well. So how do you connect the dots within innovation topics, and how do you do that?
Yeah, well, yeah, as you perfectly described, I'm a visual person that try to get an overview of what is actually happening and seeing patterns and things like that, and I love that phase of being really abstract and then finally just gathering it all. I get influences from many different ways, but really just keeping up with the times and listening into what's going on in the world, the culture changes, the value changes, the lifestyle changes. We're in the middle of so many transformations at the same time, and the ability to adapt is so crucial. And we are in a phase of human history also with a lot of transformation. So just learning, I'm looking a lot into psychology and philosophy, and really just reflecting on these new tendencies and how they fit into the world today. So a lot of different influences, but really just trying to talk to people and hear about new concepts.
Yeah. So how do you then see with the XYZ Playground having this kind of, that's a bit connected to innovation, how do you see this going forward from an innovation perspective? Like what's happening, especially now in the time it's December 2020, which is lockdown 2.0 in a lot of countries in Europe. How do you see that evolving from an innovation perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we're not in a lockdown in a digital context. We have the ability to do a lot of things, and in the virtual world, I saw a really amazing thing they've done with a remote conversation between Oprah and Obama, Barack Obama, and they were on a green screen, both of them. And in the green screen, they were actually sitting in a living room together simultaneously. and they had a fireplace with actually crackling noise from the fireplace. And
That's
it
cool.
doesn't matter that they're not in the same room, because we're consuming the material in a digital context. So I think we can play a lot around in the virtual context.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to learn still. I guess at least that we're in the beginning of these steps. We're slowly getting used. I mean, now since, at least for me, it's like since February, I'm definitely working from home. I'm not going into any public offices anymore. So I'm used to interact digitally. Like we have met for, I don't know how long, at least a year in person. So it just works as if we would be meeting each other in person. It's quite interesting to see this evolving, even having different screens in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
And building things at home that you have the possibility to use this digital ways of engaging.
Yeah, and when you move work into the digital context, you can also play around with the physical context.
Yeah.
I always see Burning Man as a good example of that, where the physical space becomes a playground. Also, where you can create new rules and experiment and explore. So if we move the concept of work to a digital context, you can decide where you want to sit physically. You can be in nature, you can be in the summer house, you can sit with people that you inspire you, or you can have different clusters for each day. So there's also a lot of possibility. I don't necessarily see the limitations.
Yeah, that's cool. What I very much like about this topic as well is I'm always quoting this, like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And if you think this now in a digital context, you can choose people from around the world to hang out with.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite interesting perspective. So sticking a little bit more around innovation. So what are the things you see other people struggling most with when it comes to innovation?
I want to talk a little bit about narratives, because we have had different narratives for a very long time on what different things are. We've been talking about the car industry being what it is, but now we're looking into like the narrative of mobility, of going from A to B, and that doesn't necessarily mean a car or a driving car. And the narrative has been a very masculine story about a guy being in control of the vehicle, and now we're talking about self-driving cars and the freedom of not owning. I think that's really interesting. And also the narratives, everyone can change it. Elon Musk have one narrative, which is a very boyish sci-fi future, as someone described it a week ago at a webinar. But we can decide the narratives of gender or race or of work or business, what value is. So I think it's a really good conversation to have around narratives and old truths.
Yeah.
And paint a picture that you want about what you want to change and what world you want to live in.
If we talk about this innovation thing from a narrative perspective, what are the things you learned recently where you changed your mindset?
I think it's really interesting when it comes to ownership as a rite of passage. That's a narrative that we can change, because am I only a grown-up if I have bought a house or I have bought a car? And the ownership, of course, is not necessarily a good thing for the environment. And a lot of young people are choosing access over ownership today.
Yeah.
So I think that was really a moment for me also. Can I still be a grown-up and still not own a house or a car?
Yeah, and that's coming back to the Xyz Playground way of thinking. That will be completely different if you talk to my parents, for example. It's like they will definitely have a different perspective than you have and than I have. So I guess that's also then an interesting way of thinking. It's like, from a business context, what if you get these people understanding each other and like discussing things? There will be something really cool coming out if you put them into the playground together, playing in the sandbox.
Definitely. And creating that space where it's allowed to freely express anything that you have on your mind, and really just move it around and look at it at different angles, and get into the 5 steps of why, like why, getting to the core of the discussion. I think it's really interesting. I really think that there's a risk of being feeling really stressed and feeling paralyzed. And there's a cost of inaction, of not moving forward. And therefore, we need to start looking into experimentation. So even just a space to sit down and reflect, to take conscious decisions forward. Because we all know that you can have a PhD, but when you get stressed like anyone else. So are there ways for us to just sit down and relax, a context out of your normal everyday life, where you can just sit down and reflect, and you will have a better ability, because stress takes down your best abilities to problem solve, to have perspective, to be creative, to have a better we feeling. So everyone should just
100% agree. 100% agrees. Just speaking about myself, like I get so many ideas when I'm running or when I'm not doing what you would call work. It's not, you will never get the best ideas when you're crunched in a situation where it's like you try to force it. It will never come.
Yeah, and to a point of technology also, I mean also that we should reflect on our relationship with technology, because the technology can enable a lot. But just because it can doesn't mean we should. So also being mindful and smart about how we use technology in order to get into that deep sense of flow and your deep focus, because those are really valuable moving forward also.
How are you doing applying this way of thinking in a daily life?
Well, I'm really into like minimalism and biohacking at the moment, where I explore how I can access my best abilities and show up to my work at my very best. And it frees me from a lot of things that steals my energy.
Explain me biohacking. I'm too old for this stuff.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I love the idea of actually hacking your biological system. And there are people that are much more extreme than me, but it's really just reflecting on how you can optimize yourself and your abilities in terms of, you can measure yourself also. So people with a digital mindset have applied this to their bodies, so they can track and log their sleep, their energy levels, their mood, and with that log, they iterate in order to optimize their life. So for me, that's definitely sleep, health, food, social life, hobbies, intellectual stimulation, all these things.
Get the point. So I'm basically doing that as a sports freak. Gatherings, like just measuring the steps and like measuring the heart rate when you're getting up, if you're properly fit to do the hard training, which is basically similar to that perspective, I guess.
And trial and error also.
No, definitely, that's cool. So you're a very visual design person. Imagine you could design something that every person in the whole world would see, every person in the whole world would engage with. what would it be?
Wow.
Taking it up a notch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm really into systems innovation at the moment. So if there was a way for me to visualize how different systems look like today and sort of make it into a DIY, crafty sort of tool for people to play around with, what can a social system look like, or how can a education system look like, or even a medical system look like, to start to explore, because the world has only been built based on what people before us thought was the ideal way of doing things, with their prerequisites. But we have different prerequisites today, and we have different challenges today. So I would want to create a visual tool for people to explore different ways of looking at systems.
It's a cool idea. Love that. So slowly getting to an end, I always provoke people a little bit. So where will you be in a year from now? And what has happened? Yeah,
well, that's the exciting part. We don't know. So I'm perfectly confident saying that I do not know where I will be. And I'm excited to see where I'll be.
And that's even not guessing where you want to be, or how do you think about these topics?
Well, of course, I have desires, and I have a desire to work more remotely and be more flexible with who and where and when, and with what I work with, and getting that variety and newness. I have a hope to work with more meaningful and purposeful work. I hope to inspire other people, and I hope to be inspired. I hope to learn a lot and being challenged and being stimulated. I am hoping to be surprised, positively surprised, and I look for a lot of enjoyment.
Nice.
Those are my parameters.
They're good ones. So what are the different media sources like? In the good old days when I was in your age, I was reading a lot of books and a little bit of blogs and podcasts and so. What are the things you read, you consume? Where do you get your perspectives from?
I mean, even with the pandemic, I think there's a lot of really interesting webinars that are happening. So I try to be in different contexts and just listen into a lot of different presentations and conferences. But I'm also reading a lot from different sources. I can't really place one specific source, but I'm looking into metamodernism, as you know, moving away from also postmodernism, which has been really critical. And of course, it's great being critical. I really urge everyone to be more critical in life, but I think it's also only the half of the answer. And the second answer is also a more solution-oriented look on life. And that's where metamodernism comes in. So everywhere I look, it's somehow being traced to metamodernism. So if you want to start somewhere, start Googling on metamodernism.
That's cool. So where can people find out about you, reach out to you?
Yeah, currently you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on linasafstrom.com.
Cool. It was a great pleasure talking to you, Lina, and really looking forward to see you growing and being one of the shooting stars in the future. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah, thank you, and likewise. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Yeah, see ya. Take care.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land, magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical.